The whole idea for everything that we talk about is self-improvement, is being better at being ourselves and allowing life to work better with us, because it works both ways. We can show people their human design all the time and saying, well, this is how you can know yourself better and behave better in life, soften the corners of your hard edges, whatever. But to know that also life reads our design and presents us with it all the time. We can't get away from it. And it's really smart to understand how life is here to treat us according to how we're designed and parry it better by being better at being ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. We can't get away from it. Our design, it's the movie, it's our life as things play out. And one of the great things about human design is it gives you a great sense of humor to see how things do play out and to not take it all so seriously.
Right. It's ironic humor, actually, because we can't, once we have seen our human design, had a human design reading, there's a language about ourselves that we've never heard before, that we use practically every day. I mean, it's amazing how we have a language that we know ourselves with, that explain ourselves to ourselves and to each other. It's always, for me, I give so much documentation to people after a reading or during and after a reading, that I say, please show this to people who are meaningful in your life so they can also know the language about you better. And then they can accept you. I mean, it's great in relationships. It's great in marriages and with children. So we can understand why we have to be who we are. We can't change that. As I said, we can do better. We can be better at being who we're here to be, but not somebody else.
And one of the ways that we can be better is that when you not just know your human design, but are willing to experiment with it and just kind of see how does that particular part show up for us when we learn something about ourselves through an analysis. It's not just, in the head. You've got to actually want to try it out a little bit. But what happens is that it alleviates some of the self-doubt and the self-judgment that we have about ourselves.
We can laugh at it. We can laugh at our idiosyncrasies that we're designed for because we were born with them, and they're playing out all the time that are automatic. And to try to change them is not even, we don't even speak that language in our brain of being different than who we are. We don't know how. Let's talk about all the people in the world who don't have our design, which is everybody else. And even in relationships, we get along with people or we don't, but we're not in their heads being them. They can't be in our heads being us. And all we can do is witness it and try to align with each other in ways that work, but not in ways that I can be somebody else with their values, their truths, their experiences. I have mine. So I don't know how to get beyond, I don't know how to get around and change my values, my truths, and my experiences in life and the conditioning I had. I can heal it. I can, do a lot for myself to find more light and alignment in my life and more purpose. And I think we all should be working on ourselves all the time to make ourselves better. But this is an opportunity to have so much more self-forgiveness and compassion for ourselves to be the ideal person that we're here to be, for good or for bad. We can't.
Exactly, our highest potential. And I would say that there are certain things that we can change about ourselves through human design when we know the specifics. You know, for example, you know, there's these 9 centers, and one of them is where the adrenals sit, and the fuel system, the root center. And so when somebody knows how that functions for them, for me, it's like I can really be busy all the time and trying to, you know, there's an anxiety that I used to have that I don't have anymore because I changed some of my behaviors because I knew that it wasn't serving me. Like always reacting. Like, for example, the phone rang. I used to always have to get up and get the phone. And then I realized, oh, that's from the external world. I don't have to react to that. So I actually, I would want to say people can actually change themselves for the better through this education.
But it's because you know the language of yourself to begin with. So that's the point. And what I say is that, you know, we fine-tune ourselves. We don't become someone who isn't that way. We become someone who tries harder to be better at avoiding our stresses and understanding our natural behavior, like to get up and get to the phone right away and be able to talk to ourselves as, oh yeah, but I'm going to do a better job at managing my inner light.
Exactly, the inner world, like the dialogue that you have with yourself. I mean, we're all talking to ourselves all the time anyway. We've all got some kind of, you know, dialogue going off in the head. It's like when something like that, because when I caught myself, it's like the dialogue was, wait a minute, I don't have to get up. I can stay and do what I'm doing. You know, it's like there's a different kind of discussion you have with yourself, if you will.
Yeah.
Know and understand certain things about your design.
Well, and that's true, for instance, with, let's say, what's called the G center. I call it the identity of that center in a human design, that I don't have any definition there. So I don't know myself from the inside out. I only know myself from the outside in. Mm. And my early conditioning in life wasn't very positive about that. So there's an inner place in me that questions myself that comes from the outside. So I know that as long as I have positive reinforcement around me, I'm very happier, I'm much happier with me. You know, that when I'm respected, loved, appreciated, I feel it in my heart. But if I don't have that coming from around me, I don't know. I'm lost. I don't know myself. And people don't understand that there is that design. A lot of people have what I have. And, you know, if you say to them, go within to know yourself, go within. There are people who are designed, that's great for. And then there are people like me, I go within, I go, I don't know, it's all open space there. So let's fill it. So I know that I need to fill it appropriately to be happy with myself.
So I've never heard anyone really talk about it in that way. So I just learned more about the people that are around me because I have that center colored in. So I can go within. I can know myself. I do have my own direction, my own love. Right. But I've never heard anyone articulate it like that, of what your inner dialogue is.
Right. And not only that, but in your human design, and those who have it defined, colored in, they're defined in different ways. And the human design will show you the ways you can best know yourself. As, you know, from this aspect in life and that aspect in life that you're sure about. And it's wonderful. I'm so happy for my clients when I see that they're defined and, you know, lucky you. But then I also am happy for my clients who are undefined. I can say, we can talk.
I know exactly how that feels.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You have centers that are undefined in other areas of your life, like you were talking about early before, about the lack of definition that makes you jump for the phone and need to secure that understanding of your, let's call it, your ego behavior. And I also struggle with that, and that's a lot of things. There's so much in human design that many different centers. There's the mind, there's the higher mind. I call it the abstract mind, the higher mind, which is the seventh chakra. Then there's the sixth chakra, and I call that the mundane mind. And so how do we know our mundane minds and our higher minds, and how do we use them? And human design actually can tell us how we're here to know our minds and what aspects of minds we're best at. Like, for instance, one thing I'm really good at in my human design, even though my mind is really open, I'm kind of an out-of-the-box guy, I do have what's called the gate of logic. So everything has to make sense to me. And when I see that, and a lot of people who come to see me for readings have it, because innately, unconsciously, they understand that I can make sense to them, and they come to hear that. And I'm always congratulating them that there's somebody who wants everything to be logical and make sense, because so many people don't have that in their chart. How much of the world, we look at it and we go, how come they can't be logical about this? They don't have it in their chart.
Well, like there's the three basic ways of thinking is logic, abstract, or rationale. And it's like when it's just very valuable for people to know where they're coming from in their way of thinking, and also to know what your partner or your daughter or,
how we think differently.
Yes, all of this is good for us to know for ourselves. And then the next step is, if you're living with people or relate with people, I think most of us do, is to know what's making them tick. Where are we? Where's the similarities, and where's their potential for friction? And even just doesn't mean you're going to have that friction. That means when it arises, you don't have to latch onto it and hold it. You can just go, oh, like we said earlier, watching the movie or watching life play out. It's like, oh, there's that difference that we have.
Right. For instance, my wife, her mundane mind is very defined. So she's very clear in her mind about things and wants things to be clear. And so much of her life is rows and columns and getting all the boxes right and, organization. She's very organized. And I'm just always my mind is just creating all the time. And the boxes get thrown out the window, and I have to, kind of reinvent them all the time. And then they get thrown out. So that's us with undefined minds. And I tell that to people who are in school, who are studying. What are their professors' minds like? Do they have a professor who wants the rows and columns and the boxes, or are they, free thinkers? They always have an original thought, and they want that to be true for them. And I refer those people to look at or remember the movie Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams, about a teacher in school who preferred to teach the open mind, and so many of the teachers wanted to teach the form. And I'm so glad I'm married to somebody whose mind is different than mine. Complement each other that way.
Exactly, and you can appreciate the differences.
Right, but I'm glad we know them. So There's so much that my wife and I have learned about each other through human design, that we're constantly able to understand and accept about each other's behavior, habits, needs, because they're designed differently, but we know the language of it, so we speak it with each other. But before we knew it, we're struggling to, why are you saying this? Why are you acting this way? Why do you need to do this rather than that? And it makes a relationship harder. Same thing with our kids. So many people in life can get along so much better if they understand their innate personality, design, mechanics of personality, mechanics of being, mechanics of thinking, mechanics of feeling. This is also about how we manage our emotions and what kind of emotional control or not do we have. And there's so much in human design about the language of our feelings and how we manage them or not. And, because there's so many different centers. And then there's that center, the spleen center, which is all about fear for survival. And if you have it very defined, one of my sons has it very defined, and he's so risk-taking. I mean, it's amazing how he has very little fear because his survival is defined. He's not as fearful about it. Then my other son, is undefined. And so he's concerned about everything. And so he's developed eyes behind his head. I mean, he is so security conscious, which is wonderful. So he doesn't get into the predicaments my younger son gets into because he's so willing to take risks. But I asked my son, why are you so willing to take risks? And he said, because I'm good at it. He knows that he's defined and he sees himself able to tackle life, and he just dives at it. And so we're all so different. It's just not some obscure habit or trait that we don't understand. When we know human design, we know actually how to describe it in detail.
Yeah, it's, just like your son, like he knows himself. He knows that part of himself really well, and so some people are like that. My son, too, takes a lot of risks. But my point is that within human design, there's certain pieces that are really strong in individuals. And if they can know that and use that, and working with an analyst to help kind of tease that out of them so they can really see all the different ways in their life that it plays out, with their relationship with their self, with their relationship with others, their work, their health. Right. We've never really done a show on health, but I think it all kind of relates back to health, whether it's mental health or physical health.
Right, but there are people who are health conscious, and there are people who aren't, and there are parts of human design that show you whether you're somebody who would be or not. And it's fascinating to see the different ways that we move through life, like you were talking about the individual. And many of us are designed to be individuals, but many of us are designed to think and behave tribally, and many of us are designed and think to behave collectively. And so there are these three different powers working through our population. And right now what we're seeing is that the tribal needs and the tribal language in the world are becoming so much more obvious. And tribal is the identity with your tribe, and you speak that language, you think that language, you're seeking tribal leaders who speak the tribal language, and a lot of it is about fear, and so you want to have conflict because you want your tribe to kill off the other tribe, and so you need to have these languages. Then there's the collective language, and so many of us are collective that want everybody to win, and so we speak the language of progressive of progress towards everybody loving each other and taking care of each other. But tribal, no, they're too afraid to speak a language where they could be harmed. And so then there's the individual who doesn't really speak either of those languages. They speak for themselves because they have that an inner circuitry of knowing, of awareness that needs to be true to itself, and they can't help it. And it's very bright. Individuals are often here because they can think in ways that tribal and collective can't. And so they're really, and we've been taught that in human design that individuals are the hope for the future. Because we have new knowings.
Within each person's design, they can have a little bit of all three, or they can have a prominence of one. Right.
We can. So some of us can appreciate the differences and live with them, and some of us need to be more tribal, or need to be more collective, or need to be more individual. So we're getting near the end of the show, and we could talk all day and night. I mean, I'm sure we'll do some more soon, because I think the audience wants to learn about how they can know themselves better, be better, and so they can actually consult with us. You do human design meetings, as I do, and we also are certified teachers of it. So Nattalee Lillico, you have a website called Align With Your Design, right?
AlignWithYourDesign.com. I'm still there, and the number to reach me at is 707-888-3569. I would be honored to introduce people to human design or add to what they already know about their design.
Right. And I always love to talk with you about human design, because you have such a depth of understanding. And I must say that there are a lot of analysts out there that are still getting their feet wet and really can't see the depth of it that you can see. And I certainly feel true to that myself.
I learned something today.
Right, and we're open to that.
Just from hearing you talk about your design, I have some new insights. So it's like it never ends. It's
right.
Definitely worth revisiting.
Good. And so this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.fm. I can be reached at peter@heartriver, HEART and my number is 212-222-7748. Nattalee and I are East Coast, West Coast, West Coast, East Coast. So you can use your compass and locate us. And so, Nattalee, thanks so much for being at Energy Stew.
Thank you, Peter.